Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers, hope you're having a really good Wednesday so far. I did not do an episode yesterday because I woke up feeling terrible about 3:30 in the morning, body aches, found out yesterday evening I have COVID. So I've just laid in the bed way longer than I like to. I'm not good at just laying around watching TV all day. So I wanted to hop on and update in some of the cases we've been following. Big thank you to everybody who's donated and bought merch. Appreciate you guys so much. Song fact of the day, the song Yellow by Coldplay, which I love. It was written in 10 minutes by Chris Martin after a bandmate looked up at the night sky and said, "Look at the stars, lads." So he sat down to write the song, and he chose the color yellow for a couple of different reasons. He said the word sounded nice, really. And also the book nearest to him when he was writing the song was the Yellow Pages. Yellow is a term that can be cowardly or afraid. And from the subject's standpoint, he could be afraid or nervous to show his love to whoever he's in love with until he ran across and jumped across for her or him. And he finally got the nerve to express his love. So there you go. Great song. And tomorrow, Lori and Chad have scheduling conferences at the same time, 9:30 a.m. I don't think Chad will show. It seems like his defense attorney, John Pryor, is really trying to keep them separate. And it seems really clear Chad has rolled on her. So we'll be interested to see what happens. It will not be streamed, but I'm sure Nate Eaton will be in the courtroom and let us know what's up. Also, Judge Boyce has granted some of Lori Hellis's requests to unseal certain documents. I have those, and I will do an episode in the next day or two. I don't really see anything super earth-shattering in those, but we will see. All right, Idaho murders, just another day, guys. It's as of yesterday, 2,645 email tips, 2,770 phone tips, 1,084 digital media submissions. And they said in the press release, still have not identified a suspect nor found the murder weapon. So they said there's been statements and speculation about the case, victim injuries, cause of death, evidence collection and processing, and investigative techniques with the criminal investigation. Law enforcement has not released additional facts to the family or the public for reasons that they are not saying. So they said they recognize the frustration this causes and that speculation is running rampant in the absence of facts. However, we firmly believe speculation and unvetted information is a disservice to the victims, their families, and our community. The Moscow Police Department is committed to providing information whenever possible, but not at the expense of compromising the investigation and prosecution. And just remember, it's a marathon and not a sprint. What everybody wants is for, number one, them to get the right person and also a successful conviction, and for that person to go away forever, because clearly that person is a lunatic. So starting today, also, Moscow police will begin boxing up and removing some of the victim's personal belongings that are not needed in the investigation. Police Chief James Fry said that as a father, he understands some of those items may hold good memories for the families. The items will be held in a secure location until the family can get them. He said that family has asked for some of these items to be returned, and they're ready to take care of that for them. They asked to keep the roads clear and also for media to be respectful of the process today. The house will still be an active crime scene, and they say progress is being made in the investigation, and they're working with the families. The police chief said they're still gathering information, tips, and evidence, and they're doing everything they need to do to move the ball forward. So Kaylee's dad, Steve, who has been very vocal in the last week especially, he was on Fox News where he said that the entry was that second floor sliding door or window. And I mentioned this on the last episode, but I didn't really make clear his point, I don't think, which to him means that the killer did not need to go to that third floor where Kaylee and Maddie were. So it kind of makes me think he might believe that Kaylee or Maddie were the targets. He said he can tell by Kaylee's texts, and the fact that she did not call 911 tells him that she wasn't in fear that night, and he's just putting all these dots together. He said he asked for permission to disclose which one of the girls was targeted based on the difference in wounds, and he was told no, that he did not need to disclose that to the public. So Police Chief James Fry spoke to Fox News yesterday and said this case is not going cold. We have tips coming in. We have investigators out every day interviewing people, and they're still reviewing evidence, looking at all aspects of this. And he said early on, no stone will go unturned. And he said he means that. He said they're going to continue. The case is not getting cold. He also addressed the complaints of Kaylee's mom, Christy, when she said they think some people have been cleared too quickly, saying the department has re-interviewed some individuals up to 3 times, noting that a cleared individual can still be called back to speak with investigators if evidence supports it. So I think that's pretty interesting statement there. We've always had the option of re-interviewing. We're actually re-interviewing people 2 or 3 times because we get tips or information that we need to verify again. And sometimes we need to ask the questions a little bit differently to ensure we're getting the proper information to continue the investigation. He said that happens regularly in all investigations. And he also said that they are still at the point where they are interviewing people on a daily basis. So Fox News host Martha McAdams said police have told her they are narrowing down a pretty good timeline and they have a good amount of information. She said they say just because they're not releasing so much information doesn't mean they don't have it. Police have relayed to her that if they didn't have information, that's when they would go to the public and say some of these little bits and pieces or reveal more little bits and pieces about who they think this person is or if this person is even a man or a woman. She said police feel they're on the right track, saying they've gathered lots of evidence and feel good about the direction that the investigation is taking. So Idaho State Police spokesman Aaron Snell said yesterday that Ethan and Xana's movements on the night of the murders is one of the larger areas they don't have a lot of information on, which is interesting because I've always been a little confused. And maybe it's just me not putting it together in my own head, but it says between 8 and 9, Xana and Ethan were at the Sigma Chi party. I don't know if they were meaning between 8 and 9 is when they arrived, or are we saying now we've got over 4 hours where they don't know where they were? So it says being able to locate what they did that night and maybe who they contacted, maybe any routes they took home would be important for the investigation. So it kind of leads me to believe, based on that statement, they still don't know exactly where Ethan and Xana were during that 4-hour time period, which is a big piece of that puzzle that they really need to narrow down because that could hold a lot of potential clues. Be interesting to see what happens with that. So on December 5th, investigators said the following about Ethan and Xana's movements on the night of the murders. Detectives continue investigating what occurred from approximately 9 p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th, when Ethan and Xana were believed to be at the Sigma Chi house on 935 Pierce Drive. I'm sorry, I don't know the actual street. I kind of butchered that. Autocorrect got me there, y'all. Any interactions, contacts, direction, and method of travel, or anything abnormal could add context to what occurred. So it just tells me that there's a huge gap in this timeline they haven't narrowed down yet. And they've told students that any information that they may have of what Ethan and Xana were doing that night to please come forward. They're not worried about anything that was happening that was illegal, such as maybe underage drinking or something like that. That's not their concern. They really need to nail down this timeline. And Ashley Banfield made a really good point saying that people within the fraternity could be hesitant to come forward because you're putting this fraternity, it's already out on a national scale with the investigation. But if some things were happening in that house, such as normal college things, which is probably underage drinking, they may be hesitant to come forward and say that stuff like that was going on. But it's really the bigger picture. Hopefully, if anybody knows anything, they'll come forward. So Brian Enton actually talked to the president of the Sigma Chi fraternity, Reed Offson, who said the house does not have security cameras outside. And as far as the timeline for Ethan and Xana, they've told investigators everything they know. So also, Kaylee's dad, Steve, has hired a private investigator to look for answers in the murders. He won't reveal who he has hired, but he said it's a former cop with 50 years of experience and an 87% success rate in solving cases. Steve calls him a true pro. Steve also told Fox News Digital on Tuesday he's consulted with multiple attorneys who could potentially force police to release more details about the case. He said there are things we can request and things we can do to get the truth faster, but you have to fill out forms to get this evidence released to you. He said, I don't know how to do that. He also said they've messed up a million times, but I don't get to say that because what experience does Steve have? He doesn't know. He's just a dad who woke up one day and had his life turned upside down. There seems to be confusion everywhere you look. It's just absurd this kind of stuff is going on right now. He also gave his opinion about investigators saying that these stabbings in Oregon and Washington were not related, saying, don't treat us like we're a bunch of little kids. You say it's not related, then tell us why it's not related. He, bless his heart, I'm sure he's dealing with a million different emotions that I hope I never have to feel. So I don't fault him for being angry at the lack of information they have. At the same time, on the flip side, I understand it's all part of the bigger picture, which is a successful arrest of the right person and a successful conviction. So hopefully something breaks soon and there are some questions answered for all of these kids, friends, and family who I'm sure are waiting every second for some kind of a break in the case. You know, I really just don't think that the killer knew the two roommates were in the basement, which, you know, kind of makes you think, is this somebody who just, this is a random murder? I don't know. And then there are things like, why go to the third floor? So it makes you think they did know. This case is very much baffling, but I was listening to Joseph Scott Morgan's episode on body bags about this case. And he said a couple of things that were really enlightening to me. Number one, they may be able to tell who was killed first because that person is not likely to have commingling of DNA from the other victims on them. I had never thought of that, y'all, but that's a really, really good point. Also, sequencing the order is going to be important because obviously, if we know one target, it would be important to determine who had the most injuries, which is kind of what we're hearing from Kaylee's dad, which is one of the girls had significantly more injuries than the other. So that's going to be a thing too, is one person out of all four seemed to be on the receiving end of the most number of stab wounds, because that's going to indicate maybe something personal with that person. The state of Idaho has given $1 million towards the investigation. Idaho House Minority Leader, I hope I'm saying her first name right, Lalana Rubel, worries if investigators don't get to the bottom of this, it could have a snowball effect on enrollment or students transferring out of the University of Idaho. And yeah, that's true. I don't think I would be sending my kid back after Thanksgiving. I would encourage my kid to stay home because we just don't know at this point if this is random or targeted. They say targeted, they don't say targeted. It's never been definitive of the police, their position. At least it hasn't been, from what I've read, clear whether it's targeted or not. They flip-flopped like a fish on it. So tip number 208-883-7180 or email tipline@ci.moscow.id.us. So real quick, in the Gabby Petito family's lawsuit against Brian Laundrie's parents, her parents have filed a motion to add the Laundrie family attorney, Steve Bernalino, as a defendant in the lawsuit against Brian's parents. So the lawsuit alleges that Brian's parents knew he murdered Gabby, knew the location of her body, and refused to provide any information to them while she was missing. They also said when they did speak, it was through Steve Bertolino, and they reference a press release on September 14th of last year by him, where Steve Bertolino said, on behalf of the Laundrie family, it is the hope of the Laundrie family that the search for Miss Petito is successful and she is reunited with her family. The motion alleges that Steve Bernalino knew when he made that statement that Gabby was dead and that under those circumstances, the statement was insensitive, cold-hearted, and outrageous. So we'll see what what's ruled on that. Interesting. I always thought that his releases to the press were very cold-hearted, not a hint of compassion in them, at least from what I was reading. So moving on to Athena Strand. Athena's mother said she wants to keep her daughter's story alive, saying, "I want everyone to know Athena for Athena, not what someone tried to make her out to be because she was the best little girl." There was a vigil held for her last night in Wise County, Texas. And so we know Tanner Horner, who's 31, has been arrested and has confessed to murdering her. He was active on social media. He would post on TikTok and Instagram. And on Instagram, he said he was in a band called Commit and Conquer. Now, Jennifer Mitchell, whose late husband owned a music venue and a bar called Tomcats West, said Tanner was also in a screaming heavy metal and pop funk group called Sacred Sound and the Outlawed as far back as 2015, and they frequently performed there. She posted on Facebook, "It makes me absolutely disgusted that the guy that killed Athena was in a local band I used to love." The band posted for a replacement singer in 2015. He is being held without bond. So Delphi murders. It's been revealed that Richard Allen was interviewed early on in the investigation into the murders of Abby and Libby and admitted to being on the bridge between 1:30 and 3:30 that day, which matched the timing that the girls were murdered. That information was apparently lost early on. And so an investigative source said the interview with Richard was overlooked due to a clerical error. Someone mislabeled or misfiled tip information in the system, resulting in Richard Allen not showing up in the correct location during a data search. The FBI said its review of the matter showed that FBI employees correctly followed established procedure. So, a review from the beginning of the murders is what led to the discovery of the interview with Richard, which put them on his trail. It was a cold case. And so they started from the beginning, and then boom, you've got this interview. Scary to think this guy's been walking around all this time, potentially because of a clerical error. How many people in that town were at risk? Everybody. So, in the probable cause affidavit, it says that an unspent round from a firearm that was owned by Richard was what ultimately tied him to the homicides. The bullet was just a few feet away from the bodies. And Richard told authorities that he never loaned his gun to anyone and ultimately could not explain how that round got there so close to the girls' bodies. He has a bail hearing scheduled for February of next year. So Cassie Carli, Marcus Spanavello, ex-boyfriend and father of Cassie's daughter, has been indicted on abuse of a corpse in Cassie's case. So according to Alabama law, abuse of a corpse is the defendant knowingly treating a human corpse in a way that would outrage ordinary family sensibilities. That's a Class C felony, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. He was scheduled actually to be in court this past yesterday, for a preliminary hearing, but that was canceled. And instead, he was served with the indictment at the jail. Also on Tuesday, the court file against Marcus was made private. He is being held without bond in Alabama. So last but not least, Alec Murdaugh. Real quick, Russell Laffitte is asking for a new trial, saying that jurors were rushed to make a decision in his case due to the Thanksgiving holiday. Good luck getting that, buddy. Laffitte was found guilty on all 6 counts of financial crimes in a federal courtroom just last month. Now, moving over to Alec. His attorneys want a bill of particulars, specifically wanting to know what the state is using for motive in the murders of Paul and Maggie. Good luck getting that. The defense says knowing the motive the state is relying on would enable his lawyers to identify relevant evidence in advance of a trial that could show he's innocent. Prosecutors say, hey, we'll respond in court filings, but the prosecution's explanation for motive in the murders has not been made public. Remember, it was testified to at Laffitte's trial that Alec was confronted by his law firm the morning of the murders about some missing money. So get this. Prosecutors have handed over 1.2 million pages of documents, mostly relating to the financial crimes in this case, which I do not think we've seen the last of. So his Attorneys say they aren't asking for specific evidence the state has, but they just want a general statement about what the state says Alec's motive was. They said that they expect it's not fair to expect them to go through the 1.2 million pages of documents to figure out the theory on motive. I mean, I think that's just what you're gonna have to do if you're defending the guy. You're gonna have to find this out yourself. They say that these potential motives are implausible, but need something more specific from the state to be able to adequately defend him at trial. Prosecutors have responded also to that defense request that Alec not be shackled during court appearances. And they just said ultimately they leave that up to whoever's in charge of his security in the courtroom. His trial scheduled to begin January 23rd in Colleton County. I'm all over it. I'll be doing daily recaps of the evidence or testimony in that case, just like I did for George Wagner, and ready to see this one go to trial. It's a big one. Not sure that it'll be the last of those kind of charges for him. We know the housekeeper's death is under investigation, as well as Stephen Smith. And I haven't heard anything about them exhuming the body of Gloria Satterfield, but we know they were granted that request to do another autopsy on her. So interesting stuff, guys. I'm going to keep on it. I'm going to go take a nap here soon. But at the same time, I do get bored. So I probably will be back tomorrow with an update unless something big breaks later today. Hopefully the Idaho murders, we get a suspect or get an arrest or something. It's going on a month, y'all. Sunday's going to be a month. That's a month. These families have had no answers. So fingers crossed something breaks soon. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. Hope you have a good day. I haven't answered any of my messages. Sorry about that. I'll try to get on that when I'm feeling a little bit better. Didn't want anybody to think I was avoiding them. But anyways, have a good rest of your day. We'll see you soon.